Hi, I've not done one of those for PlayStation yet, so here we are, top 30 PS1 games. Persona 2 Eternal Punishment is a fantastic dark mystery role-playing and a direct follow-up to earlier Innocent Sin. In fact, it tells the same exact story, but from a perspective of different characters. It is set in a fictional Japanese city of Sumaru and follows reporter Maya Amano, who's investigating the so-called Joker curse, a curse that automatically spawns Batman villains in dangerously high numbers. Or, since it's a bit more plausible explanation, it's a mysterious phenomenon causing people's wishes and rumors to come true. And you can only imagine the chaos and danger something like that can cause. Maya and her soon-to-be party members, who'll help her in the investigation, all have the ability to summon so-called personas, physical manifestations of their personalities, and then use them in turn-based battles against demons and other weird creatures. Persona games are part horror, part mystery, and all the way amazing RPGs, and this one is no different. Oh, and the rumor system is quite novel and super fun too, and it allows of spreading of rumors that then can yield positive or negative effects on your group and the entire town. Street Fighter Alpha 3 is arguably the best 2D Street Fighter ever since the legendary arcade classic Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I say arguably, but I don't really need anyone contesting that, it's a very personal choice, and personally I'd probably stick to Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo anyway. Alpha 3 offers an incredible stacked roster of over 30 characters, including a healthy mix of old favorites and few new fighters. It differs from two previous Alpha games by offering 3 different fighting styles to choose from: Aism, Xism and Vism. They may not change the movesets dramatically, but rather the way the super combos are used and accessed. In first, Aism, you have 3-level combo gauge and access to numerous super combo moves. Xism is based on Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, offering 1 combo meter and only one, but very powerful super combo. And finally Vism, which doesn't use super combos at all, but allows for performing of custom ones. In the end, if you like any other Street Fighter games, Alpha 3 is probably objectively better. At least when it's only 2D iterations that we take under consideration here. I've covered Parasite Eve in detail in one of my Forgotten Treasure series videos, so if what I'll say here will interest you in the slightest, the link will be somewhere in the description below. And trust me, it's a game worth your time. Parasite Eve is a sci-fi detective mystery real-time role-playing in which you play as Aya Bree, an ordinary NYC rookie cop investigating an extraordinary case of formerly a person and now being known as Eve over a 6-day period. Eve aims to destroy humanity by means of spontaneous combustion, which is a dick move as I've burned myself on a hotpot once and I can't imagine burning to the point of melting all over all at once. It must be a nightmare. Kinda like listening to my boss's wife talk about how all of us are magical creatures of light. Anyway, as the game will progress, Aya will learn about mitochondria that supposedly lives within humans and how they are these separate evolving on its own creatures on using humans as unknown hosts. She will also get different parasite powers, which is super fun, and they will help her battle numerous different mutants and eventually Eve too. Following my recent trip to Japan and a visit to Samurai and Ninja Museum, which was fantastic by the way and I can't recommend it enough, I learned that everything we know about ninjas from the movies and video games is a lie. You wouldn't believe how far what we are shown is from the truth. But that's irrelevant and something you should learn about there on the spot. Also, the truth would really not make for a very fun game. And Tenchu Stealth Assassins? Sure is. Fun, that is. It's a 3D third-person arcade adventure game similar in mechanics to the old-time classic Tomb Raider, but focusing much more on stealth and quiet unseen attacks rather than action-based combat or shootouts. You play as Rikamuru or Ayame of the Azuma Ninja clan, completing missions for the Lord Goda in the Sengoku era Japan. These 11 missions are very sandboxy and completing them in total stealth rewards Grandmaster ranks that in turn unlocks new skills and abilities. Because of how many amazing games PlayStation received over its lifespan, it is not a system that is widely associated with traditional arcade shooters, more with emerging at the time full 3D polygonal action-adventure games and platformers. Still, it doesn't change the fact that it did receive some incredible pew-pew-pewers, more than a few in fact, and Einhander, which in Latin means a man who picks his nose with his left hand only, is a phenomenal horizontal scrolling shoot-em-up in vein of the classics like Gradius. It depicts a conflict between Earth and Moon, taking place in the mid-21st century, with Earth slowly pulling ahead. So Moon, or well, Selene Colony on it to be precise, in a last-ditch effort, throws 3 super modern, experimental Einhander ships into conflict. They are known for the quote-unquote hand mount, allowing it to change weaponry mid-battle. Weapons come in the form of the gunpots that drop from destroyed enemies, and most stages have mid and end level bosses, which are quite fun to figure out the patterns of. I wanted to be a 2-pack once, so not just a rapper, but a 2-pack. Which is odd given how young he died and how hardcore he was, while I'm just a soft and largely harmless rubber ducky. I'm sure that it's obvious by now that I don't anymore. Parappa, however, still does, he didn't abandon the dream. Parappa the Rapper is one of the most unusual and addictive rhythm games ever made. You play as the rapping puppy Parappa, who in order to impress the girl he is into, Scanny Funny, raps his way through learning different useful skills, like kung fu, driving, cooking, and others. In essence, it's just a simple quick-time event kind of a rhythm game in which you need to press the right buttons at the right time to match your teacher's rapping line. You should keep the ranking of your rap high to progress through the stages and not have to repeat them again. It's a mechanically simple game that you won't be able to put down. Oddworld is dark, gloomy, and very dystopian feeling sci-fi action puzzle platformer. Yep, the combination of genres may be unusual, but they somehow work quite well with one another. You play as Ape, because Ace was taken already, and you're one of the Madocons, peaceful and enslaved by the Glucons race. And when you learn that your brethren are used by the Glucons as meat, yeah, as in to eat in the form of various fast food items, your anger explodes within you with a force equal to at least 2 or 3 curry-fueled farts. And you decide to embark on a mission of emancipation. Ape's Oddysee is all about freeing your kind, puzzling, staying out of sight of evil Glucons, and killing them with telepathically controlled by you slicks. Oddworld was incredibly heavy in its theme for a platformer, but very cinematic in design, making for an enjoyable and challenging experience. Wipeout XL, aka Wipeout 2097, is Psygnosis' crowning jewel on PlayStation and one of the best sci-fi racers ever made. Especially if you're into hyperspeed action racers. Simply put, if you've played any Wipeouts, you've played them all. And while there are some differences between them, they are all more or less the same, featuring races and circuit arenas with liberally scattered on them different weapons and upgrades, and running at triple-digit speeds. Doing well in races unlocks additional tracks, vehicles, and even a new season game mode. Psygnosis may have been a star on the Amiga in the early 90s, but when they were bought by Sony and switched to working on games for PlayStation, they truly showed what they were capable of. And while Wipeouts were not their only games, they were definitely their trademark. When we compare today's Spider-Man games to those released in 2000s, the oldies don't look that great. But back then, oh boy, were they fantastic. Not only they offered us a chance to experience how it would be to swing over New York fighting iconic bodies like Scorpion, Rhino, Venom, Mysterio, Carnage, and even Wall Crawler's arch-villain Dr. Octopus, but also proved that superhero games can actually be really fun and work well in full 3D. You've naturally your Spidey powers at your disposal and numerous different gadgets available at all times too, and can even unlock alternate costumes, each of which has their own specifications, enhancements or extra abilities. The game opens with Spider-Man's impostor attacking Dr. Octavius's crew and shattering Eddie Brock's camera, which starts the unstoppable chain of events leading to police seeking our hero and Eddie as Venom hunting him down to squash him like a bug.
That's the last one. Hope these hostages are still alright.
First, Colin McRae rally may have been the groundbreaking title, one that showed us how fun and also great looking races can be, but it's the second that perfected the formula, received universal acclaim and became a huge hit. It featured 80 stages in 8 countries and 3 difficulty modes, each next accessible by completion of the previous one. You start with 13 cars, some of them iconic classics like Ford Focus, Subaru Impreza, Peugeot 205 Turbo, Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 6, Toyota Corolla, and unlock more with progression. The new addition is the arcade mode, which is something I always appreciated in the racers, as I do much better in them than in simulation-centric modes. At the time of its release, Colin McRae Rally 2.0 was the best looking and smoothest running game in the genre on PlayStation and one responsible for popularization of the sport among gamers. Ape Escape is a fantastic third-person 3D platformer and also the first game ever to require the new DualShock controller, and it utilizes that new right stick all the time, relying on it entirely whenever you want to use any items. I'm one of these people who really want to be into 3D platformers, but are near always severely disappointed by them, being either repeatable or a mess to control or using a camera that does everything in its power to be the game's main villain. and Ape Escape is a rare example of a game that not only did not bore me to death, but one that I actually enjoyed playing. By a misuse of intelligence-boosting helmet, Spectre, a local amusement park monkey, gained super monkey intelligence and decided to take over the world. The escalation may be quick, but it's also sorta understandable, as he did spend most of his life in a cage. So now, you have to stop him and his army of a bit but not too much above average intelligent apes from doing so. Nintendo had its Mario Kart, and PlayStation does not. The end. Oh, you're still here. Okay. So, Crash Team Racing, having nothing to do with Nintendo, focuses on PlayStation native characters, particularly those known from Crash Bandicoot series of games, so Crash, Coco, Neo Cortex, Papu Papu and many others. Equally as weird named. Well, truth be told, just a few more really, but that many repeated a few times sounded way better in my head. For the most part, Crash Team Racing is just a kart racer in which you're competing against friends or CPU-controlled opponents in series of fun-designed stages. The kicker here is that, same as in Mario Team counterpart to it, Crash features numerous offensive and defensive power-ups. And while it may not be it per se, if it plays like it and feels like it, so maybe it is it to some degree. Whatever, semantics aside, what it most definitely is fun. Syphon Filter is a third-person perspective espionage-themed shooter, beautifully combining action, stealth and puzzle-solving elements with a gripping story and hella addicting gameplay. And if you've not heard hella since 1990s, then it's clear that you've not seen many videos of mine, as I'm bringing it back. The same way anti-vaxxers brought back polio. Too early? Maybe? I don't know. Yeah, I'm leaving it in. Anyway, the game takes places in many different locations all around the world, from Washington DC through Costa Rica and Ukraine, all the way to Kazakhstan, where you may or may not meet Borat, and you will just never know until you play the game. And trust me, it's worth it, even if I'm just hooking you here with Borat. Syphon Filter's main plot centers around Gabriel Logan and his partner Liang Xing trying to dismantle international terrorist organization known as Black Button. Legacy of Kain's Soul Reaver is the third-person perspective action game with some simple puzzling and platforming elements and a follow-up to original Blood Omen. In fact, it is set 1500 years after it and focuses on Raziel and his quest to purge the land of vampires and take revenge on Kain and his brothers, leaders of the 6 clans. Interestingly enough, the world of Nogov is largely open and allows you to visit most of its locations from the get-go and come back to those you've been to previously. Some areas may require unlocking or gaining specific abilities to get to, but these are considered part of puzzling. Puzzling that is mostly either based on sliding blocks or activation of hidden switches. They may not sound very fun or creative, but the gameplay more than makes up for the perceived simplicity. Final Fantasy Tactics, or as I like to call it Final Fantasty Tactics, is a truly tasty sweet treat to any and all fans of fantasy JRPGs and turn-based tactical strategies. In fact, most of the time you spend in Tactics will be on top-down isometric battlefields in which you lead your group of characters into numerous strategic battles against various foes. Terrain, elevation, weather and other elements play into advantages and disadvantages during these encounters, and learning them all is a key to success. Successful attacks reward experience and job points, which help you better your characters. The job system allows for a deep customization of your group and fun minimaxing possibilities if you're into that thing. There is a reason why most top-down turn-based tactics RPGs are compared to this one, and the reason is the quality in all aspects of its design. Xenogears is the first in the series of Xeno RPGs and a sci-fi futuristic turn-based active time battle marvel. All Xeno games are now considered cult classics, and this, first, is the best place to learn why. The continent of Ignas is ruled and controlled by Solaris, country ruled by the evil Emperor Kain, and the only place that somehow withstood the expansive advances of Solaris is the nation of Shivat. The game follows protagonist Fei Fong Wong, a retrograde amnesiac who, along with a group of his companions, all work to overthrow the despotic and all-powerful Solaris. All the while, they will discover mysteries concerning their world and even our main hero's past. Xenogears uses a lot of religious themes and elements of psychology to tell its tale, which may not be everyone's cup of tea, but whether you're a believer or not, it's definitely an adventure worth experiencing. So, suspend your belief or disbelief and give it a chance. It's definitely worth it. There are 3 things you can be pretty sure of whenever talking about Final Fantasy games. That they will have an involving and compelling story, that the characters will be interesting and well fleshed out, and that they will be a blast to play and follow to the very end. And Final Fantasy IX is all that. It's a story full of twists, turns, and even a betrayal. You play as Zidane, a member of a troupe of actors who are also secretly thieves, and you plan to kidnap Princess Garnet from her mother in hopes of a huge ransom. But after you did just that, you all realize that Queen of Alexandria is acting rather weird and that she's definitely up to no good. So, you and Princess join forces to figure out what could have been the reason for Queen's evil doing and also to stop it. As in most Final Fantasy games of the time, the combat is in an active time battle turn system and the card minigame from the previous entry is now a staple and much more prominent. Silent Hill is one of the most famous, most atmospheric and nerve-wracking at the same time survival horror video games. Unlike many other similar titles at the time, all of Silent Hill's environments, and not only items and characters, are rendered in real time, adding a lot to the quality of its presentation, interactivity and fun. That said, PlayStation was not really a powerhouse, so to hide all the popping in of objects, a lot of fog was used, which quite coincidentally, while used for technical reasons only, added a lot to the atmosphere and fear factor. The story follows Harry Mason as he's searching for his missing daughter in the eponymous fictional American town of Silent Hill. As he goes about that, he uncovers a sinister cult and their efforts in reviving their long-dead evil deity. Spyro 2 Ripto's Revenge is a worthy sequel to original Spyro and a fantastic 3D action platformer. Sure, cutesy graphics and simple gameplay loop may make it appear as a game for kids, but believe you me, it's a good one, and you'll have as much fun, if not more, than the kids would. Especially that the levels that you'll be traversing through are rather expansive and not as linear as they previously were, rewarding exploration with discovery of extra gems and fun subquests to complete. Spyro's classic set of moves of fire breathing, headbutt and gliding is complemented with a ground pound, and it is used in various combat scenarios and for puzzling too. Spyro gets mysteriously transported to Avalar, from which he must get back home. He learns, however, that the region is contested by the evil warlock Crypto and his 2 henchmen Crash and Gulp, so he agrees to help in dealing with the invaders. Driver. Well, imagine GTA but without G and T. It doesn't mean that it's a bad game. In fact, other than the first tutorial mission, which has always been my gaming nemesis, it's rather great. You play as an undercover cop, John Tanner, infiltrating a criminal organization and their operations to eventually discover and prevent the plot to assassinate the President of the United States. Driver is set in 4 iconic cities: Miami, San Francisco, Los Angeles and New York. They are not faithful recreations of the real-life counterparts, however, but the gamified and miniaturized versions of the real deals. They are fully open though, which is always fun. So is G without TNA as good? It's not, but it's just good, and that's as much as one could hope that it would be. No Crash Bandicoot is a bad game, but at least on original PlayStation, one was notably better than the others, and it's Crash Bandicoot Warp. It starts directly after the second game, and you're once again in control of the eponymous hero. When ruins of previous games' villains Dr. Neo Cortex's space station crash land on Earth, they unleash Uka Uka, innocent-sounding but truly a monster creature that joins Dr. Cortex and Nefarious Tropy on a mission to collect crystals scattered around time and then use their energy to enslave the Earth. For the most part, Crash is still a rather linear 3D action platformer, but while it may sound like a downside, the level design, perfect balancing of challenge and action, and numerous pickups make it a very enjoyable and fresh-feeling experience. If you've never played a Crash game, then you're either lying or are much younger than most of us. So if you want to start now, Warp is the best place to do so, or the recent re-release of the Insane Trilogy, cause that actually works on all modern systems. While Vagrant Story was made by the folks responsible for the Final Fantasy Tactics, it's actually an action role-playing and not a turn-based one. And it's a completely different title to most RPGs that you've ever played, especially of the JRPG variety. The game is near entirely set in the dungeon-like catacombs where you're seeking a long-destroyed magical city of Lea Monde. There are no friendly NPCs in Vagrant Story, no shops, no safe areas and no money either. What's more, there are no experience points and our singular hero gains boost to his attributes randomly after defeating bosses. What he can do to customize himself and better his chances of survival is tied to weapons and armor. and these come in many different varieties and forms, and can even be disassembled and put together using different parts from different original pieces. It adds surprising variety to the gameplay, as weapons not only have their own damage stat, but also kind of damage, edged, blunt and piercing, and affinity towards any of the 6 kinds of enemies. And working on this is a lot of fun. So is the game, so if you've not had a chance before, do try it out. I'm probably gonna offend many of you, but I was never really a Tekken player. I never grasped its controls, combo system or cared for it too much, so whenever I had to play it against anyone, I was always the losing one. So, while my experience with it is limited, to having often to choose a character to have its butt kicked, I do understand and appreciate its significance for both PlayStation and video gaming overall. Tekken 3 is set 20 years after its predecessor and features a large new cast of characters, most of which are now a staple. It also introduced a sidestep ability that changed the way the series are played forever, more escapes from tackles and stunts, more moves with juggling and combo throws. Tekken 3 is a proper follow-up to the early one and an excellent fighter, even if not one for myself. It's worth noting that it also includes a Tekken Force minigame on PlayStation, which for all intents and purposes is just a beat 'em up. It may not have been a necessary addition, but it was definitely a fun one. Resident Evil 2 was one of the most iconic sci-fi survival horror games on the original PlayStation, and it's still one to this very day 27 years later. It follows Claire Redfield, sister of Chris, one of the protagonists of the first game, and Leon Kennedy, a rookie cop on his first day on the job. As they arrive in the infamous Raccoon City, they find it in a literal ruin and overrun by mindless flesh-eating once human and now monsters. Each of them must find a way out of the city alive, which is easier said than done. Traditionally for the early games in the genre, the backgrounds are 2D pre-rendered graphics, while the characters, monsters and items are all real-time rendered on top of them, making for an odd feeling but smooth running experience. Weapons and items may be in a bit higher supply than in the first game too, but still not enough to make you feel safe or comfortable, and you will be always looking for more. While Tomb Raider may have not been technically the first 3D action adventure game, that title would go to Amiga's Hunter, it was still the first universally beloved one and an Indiana Jones game that we always wanted, without the Indiana Jones himself attached to it in any way. But the absence of Dr. Jones was not an issue for most of us, to any of us really, as we've received a sporty, boobalicious Miss Lara Croft instead. A British adventurer/archaeologist who's been charming us with her on-screen presence ever since in countless releases. Tomb Raider is equal parts exploration, puzzle solving and combat, and full-time fun. Lara can jump, run, swim, roll and hold on to ledges, and while she's on a seemingly simple mission to recover an artifact known as the Scion of Atlantis, it will soon turn out to be much more than she could have ever expected. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 was a cultural phenomenon, like planking, or Ice Bucket Challenge, or sitting with a laptop in Starbucks and writing political romance fiction. One that most PlayStation gamers loved, and one I personally cared very little for. For all intents and purposes, it was the same game as the original, but considerably expanded. It offered higher fidelity and smoother graphics, improved gameplay, especially in terms of manuals and cash rewards, and a variety of real-life skateboarders to play as. You could also create your own skater for the career mode, which I suppose must have been the most fun, as with completion of objectives you could have evolved his attributes. The controls were notably improved too, which made for a very pleasant and intuitive gameplay that millions fell in love with. First Gran Turismo may have been the breakthrough title, showing us how much we all wanted to become racing drivers while not even knowing about it before, but it was the second that cemented the idea in our minds for years to come. Gran Turismo 2 was a primetime realistic racing simulation that offered only 20-something tracks to race on. And believe you me, if you take your rose-tinted glasses off and free yourself from the chains of nostalgia, you'll agree that they were nothing special. But the 650 unique vehicles that you could save money for while racing and then keep in tip-top shape, making sure that they would not get too damaged, was what made it a one-of-a-kind at the time title. Gameplay-wise, the driving mechanics and physics remained mostly unchanged from the original, with a slight modification to the brakes that were not locking the cars in oversteer as easy as they did before. By late 1990s, the world was all about 3D. 3D games, 3D movies, 3D glasses and 3D boobies. and it seemed that there was no place for any 2D games anymore. Enter Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Not only it proved all the 3D lovers wrong, but it proved them so wrong that they all just shut about it for a good playthrough or two, quietly completing this gem of a game, not mentioning that third dimension even once. It's a vampire-themed exploration action platformer, so a Metroidvania kind of a game that puts you in control of Alucard, who's trailing through Dracula's castle, seeking entity known as Shaft, who in turn is in control of Richter Belmont, the self-proclaimed lord of the castle and a protagonist of the previous entry in the Castlevania series. Doing so will actually not end the game, however, but unlock its second, as long as the first part, that I will not spoil here for the sake of those who never played it. Final Fantasy VII is clearly the most popular and widely considered as the best RPG on original PlayStation and one of the most important ones in the entire history of gaming. Whether it deserves the acclaim or not depends on your outlook on JRPGs, but I believe that it's definitely a staple release in the genre and one that the entire generation of gamers grew up with. The story focuses on evil Shinra Corporation exploiting the planet for its precious Mako energy as a source of power. Mako energy, however, is what sustains all life. So you playing as Cloud and a group of his friends will have to oppose Shinra, Sephiroth, a superhuman standing behind it and wanting to harness the planet's energy to become an immortal god. I'm sure that when we got to the second spot, you knew what the first will be, as the game as big as important as Metal Gear Solid just couldn't not find its way to this list. It's an action-adventure espionage stealth shooter with a lot of sneaking and close to no shooting. Well, I'm exaggerating obviously, but the focus is definitely on the staying out of sight and doing things quietly rather than running in guns blazing. In fact, doing so will most of the time end your mission fast, as Solid Snake is a super agent and not a bullet sponge. SpongeBob is a bullet sponge, but he on the other hand is not a super agent. Anyway, the story sees you infiltrating a nuclear weapons facility to neutralize Foxhound, one special forces unit, now a TERRORIST organization. So you need to free all the hostages and prevent the nuclear missiles launch. Metal Gear Solid gained worldwide popularity for its gameplay, characters, storytelling and atmosphere, and is one of the titles that most gamers heard about, even those who never had the chance to play it. I'm gonna tell you a secret. It's not a big one, but it's a secret nonetheless. I kinda sorta lied to you a little. Not a lot though, I'm not coming out here as an AI bent on taking over the world. In fact, I'm neither AI nor want this world to rule, but I said something about this list which is a bit untrue. I initially mentioned that it's not in order, and I've done it so because it's very difficult to be objective and people tend to take these kinds of lists as a personal offense if they're not exactly how they imagine them to be. But I did actually try setting it up in order. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And when you're down there, why not hit those like, sub, share and bell icons too, for YouTube to let you know when I release something new. For me this is all, so take care of yourself and I'll talk to you soon.